A Tale of a Muslim Girl and Her Infidel Lover. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Before we dive into the tapestry of the story, I would like to remind the reader that this novel is narrated in 3 books. Book 3. The Muslim Apostate Girl and Her Infidel Lover. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real life of a Muslim girl in Sudan. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 44. Breaking the Glacier of Love. In all her controversial speeches and provocative writings, Dr. Ibtihal had never regretted authoring a book as she felt with her third book, Imagine a World Without Islam, and Imagine a World in Which All Countries Have Become Muslim. She felt she is responsible for every Christian man got killed, each woman was raped, and their children becoming orphans and homeless in the Muslim countries. If she knew that her third book would create such reckless hatred and lead to brutal pogroms, she would never have written it. She felt every drop of innocent bloodshed as if it were poured out of her own body. She spent days and nights weeping and praying for those victims. Another ugly side of the negative reactions against the book is the accusation that Dr. Ibtihal is a lesbian, and her writings are meant to encourage bad habits such as self-masturbation and being a sexually perverted girl who had an Indian girlfriend and kissed her on her sweet lips as a beautiful bride was kissed by her handsome groom. Such disgraceful and immoral act took place when the 2 lesbians were on their honeymoon in Kashmir while they were celebrating their secret gay marriage. Despite such false claim, the second accusation broke the icy mountain between the lovers Ibtihal and Kamal and made them rethink many words they had spoken to each other in the past. The Sudanese apostate man Dr. Kamal felt the love of the Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal for him only after he began to write her biography. Before that time, he used to think she liked him in a platonic love as a good buddy and companion of the noble cause she is trying to spread all over the world. In fact, Dr. Kamal fell in love with the noble character of the genius Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal before he met her in the disgusting racist Arab and African immigrant church in Toronto City. When he met her in person, his deep love for the pretty girl Ibtihal grew stronger. But unfortunately, he could not read her love for him either through her musical voice or in her beautiful eyes. The unfair accusation of the Princess Ibtihal as a lesbian who loved a pretty Indian girl and had kissed her on her sweet lips led the Muslim apostate man Dr. Kamal to draft a lengthy article in one of the widely read newspapers in Toronto to refute such false allegation. In his article, he mentioned that he is having a love affair for over 2 years with the Sudanese apostate girl who authored the recent controversial book. Dr. Ibtihal became exceedingly surprised when she read Dr. Kamal's article about his emotional relationship with her. As soon as she met him, she accused him of lying to protect her reputation. According to his article, he revealed his strong love for the author Dr. Ibtihal, and she admitted her deep love for him too. When they met, a wonderful dialogue took place between the 2 lovers that worth mentioning in verbatim. "I think you have complicated the problem rather than solved it," said the pretty Ibtihal a bit angrily. "You didn't need to lie to protect my reputation." "I did not lie," replied the handsome man Kamal softly while avoiding facing Ibtihal's angry face. "Yes, you did. You wrote that you have had a love relationship with me for over 2 years. Is that not a lie?" "Believe me, my dear Ibtihal, I did not lie. I only wrote what I am feeling in my heart towards you from the time I met you. I know that you love me, and I love you too, but that is not the kind of love my accusers are talking about. They are not talking about platonic love, but they meant erotic love when they accused me of being a lesbian who is having a sexual inclination towards women and not men. I know very well that your accusers are talking about erotic love, which involves a sexual relationship between two lovers of the opposite sex. They made it noticeably clear when they referred to your imaginary dream, in which you talked about your Indian girlfriend, and then your experience of self-masturbation that followed immediately after you spent 14 days in Kashmir with the pretty Indian girlfriend. Everyone who is a fault finder would interpret it as you are having such an inclination toward the same sex. But only the person who wants to cut you from your past and ignore your strong love affair with your lover, the late Dr. Samir, would accuse you of being a lesbian girl. Okay, let me agree with you that your article might convince some people that I am not a lesbian, and that you and I have over a 2-year love affair. What is the next step? How are we going to explain this to the Muslims Liberation Movement staff and members, supporters, and critics? Should we tell our staff later that you lied in the article to protect my reputation? Or should we get married to please others? Still, I am on my words, I had not lied in my article. What I feel towards you, I mentioned it in public. I am sorry, sweetie. I am supposed to reveal my feelings first to you, and then after that to the public. But I have not had the courage to do so for over 2 years. When you were accused of being lesbian, I felt that the time had come for that wall of fear to be broken. I hope you don't look at me as an opportunist who took advantage of the false allegation against you and revealed my love for you to the public rather than to you first. Oh my God, said Dr. Ibtihal, speaking rather to herself than to her lover Dr. Kamal, what a blind girlfriend I am. During these 2 years, I suffered a lot because of my stupidity. How come I was never able to read your love in all those romantic words you had spoken to me? Me too, I fell in love with you from the first day I met you, but I never understood that you shared the same feelings towards me. I thought I was selfishly trying to keep you near to me to protect my lover from being once again snatched by another Islamic terrorist group. However, later I fought against my selfish feelings, therefore I released you, and allowed you to go to Montreal. When the board of directors wanted to send you far away from me to a far place such as Vancouver City in Western Canada, I stood against them, and sent the Palestinian girl Warda instead of you. How come you hadn't seen all those selfish romantic interests and ulterior emotional motives of mine towards you? I have always stupidly misunderstood you in those decisions. I thought you didn't want me like a second person in the Muslims Liberation Movement to surpass you. I thought you wanted me always to be under your control. What a stupid lover I am too. Oh my God, said the pretty Dr. Ibtihal, putting both hands on her head. I did not do it because of that. I just wanted you to remain always beside me. Your presence, my dear, would always give me strength and courage and filled my heart with boundless joy. I enjoy having you near me. I am so sorry, sweetie. I committed a terrible sin against you. Forgive me. We both need to forgive each other and blame ourselves for wasting such precious time. In fact, both of us punished ourselves. I had never expected that you were going to love someone else after Dr. Samir. I thought after the brutal assassination of your Christian lover you have built a wall around your heart, and decided to live on those beautiful memories of your love for him. For that reason, I decided not to interfere in that eternal love or force my love on you. I looked at myself as not worthy to compete with your late lover and try to snatch your heart from him. It is true, my love for Dr. Samir is an everlasting love, but he has been able to come back to me in your love. Believe me, darling, I don't feel that you are less than him in any way. The same strong love I had for him is the same love I have now in my heart for you. Then the two lovers continued for an exceptionally long time to praise, blame, appreciate, and enjoy those wonderful moments after they have been able at last to break that icy ground of their glacier mountain of love that held them from revealing their love for each other for such a long time. For the first time, the sweet lips of Ibtihal have kissed another man other than her handsome infidel lover Dr. Samir. That wonderful conversation happened to be in the apartment of the Muslim apostate lover Dr. Kamal, and hence the lovers have neither bothered about the time nor worried about people around them spoiling such a wonderful union of souls and bodies. It is late in the night when the pretty Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal and her Sudanese apostate lover Dr. Kamal said their goodbyes on the doorsteps and separated temporarily for a while. Chapter 45. The indictment of the controversial author by the Toronto Criminal Court. When the pretty Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal revealed her deep love to her handsome apostate lover, the highly educated Sudanese apostate man Dr. Kamal, the staff of the Muslims Liberation Movement reached 100 employees in Canada. The Liberation Movement decided to send 20 members of its staff to launch new branches in some of the main cities in the United States of America such as New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Houston, and Chicago. But the movement preferred to begin first its new branches near eastern Canada for keeping close contact with its base in Toronto. Therefore, the Liberation Movement decided to launch the first branch in New York. The CEO Ibtihal and her manager and secretary Dr. Kamal traveled to New York to prepare the accommodation and the studios for the selected 20 staff members. The trip from Toronto to New York is unique because it is the first journey for the two lovers to travel together after they opened the fountains of their deep love for each other. Therefore, the first days of the trip turned into a beautiful romantic tour around New York City. Also, the lovers have planned to travel to Europe and begin new branches over there after their return from New York. Initially, the lovers planned to spend a month in New York, but for some legal dispute, their trip has been cut down to 2 weeks only. Before they returned to Toronto, the lovers rented 5 apartments and converted them into residences and radio studios for the Liberation Movement. The author Dr. Ibtihal has been required by the criminal court to return to Canada to face the charges that have been placed on her third book, Let Us Imagine a World Without Islam and Muslims, by the Islamic Council of Toronto. In its lawsuit, the Islamic Council has accused the controversial author of the so-called provocative and anti-Islamic book of calling Muslims a satanic race and dangerous terrorists, and therefore, the world must get rid of them. She also claimed the world will be a better place without Muslims and their terrorist religion. Moreover, she blamed indiscriminately all Muslims, males and females, young and old, including their children, for all the terrorist activities in the world. She further made the religion of Islam to be the source of all contemporary evils, calling Muslims primitives, barbarians, and savages, and portraying Muslim men as oppressors and abusers of their female counterparts. She referred to the Holy Quran as a terror-inspiring book, and the infallible Prophet Muhammad the messenger of Satan. At first, the controversial suspect Dr. Ibtihal decided to face the charges individually and keep the Muslims Liberation Movement out of the legal dispute. But the male lawyer for the Islamic Council tried before the trial to prove that the author of the abusive book and the anti-Islamic movement are inseparable. Therefore, he wants the court to lay the charges on the controversial author Ibtihal, as well as on her anti-Islamic Muslims Liberation Movement. In that way, the Islamic Council thought that by condemning the despicable Sudanese apostate author of the provocative book, the repulsive Muslims Liberation Movement would be condemned too. Accordingly, the Islamic Council of Toronto wants all the 100 employees of the anti-Islamic movement to be prosecuted along with its founder and the female CEO, Ibtihal Taha al-Amin. Notwithstanding, the Sudanese author's attorney-lawyer refused to accept such an argument and contended that if the Islamic Council wanted to sue the Muslims Liberation Movement for defaming Muslims, why did it not do so before the book in question was published? Therefore, she said, the trial should be about the book and not the Muslims Liberation Movement. The Toronto Criminal Court accepted the argument of the lawyer of the suspect and ruled that the charges should be directed against the third controversial book only. Toronto had never witnessed such a trial before. The courtroom is overcrowded with media people and the public. It is believed that between every two people there is a cop in civilian dress. The police department of Toronto does not want to stain or stigmatize with shame its long history of being the best department of police on the North American continent. Therefore, it placed tight security in court and everywhere in the city to ensure that no terrorist attack can materialize on that day. Most of the audience came to the court on that day to see the most influential and controversial woman of the century. Dr. Ibtihal had not appeared in person in any public gathering since the time she arrived in Canada 3 years ago. People saw her on TV recently after she published her third controversial book. Furthermore, she did not deliver any public or private speech in Canada that stirred such controversy as her last book did. For some people, the trial is history in the making. Some people argued that whatever may be the outcome of the trial, it is wrong to take an author to court, because she drafted a book in which she expressed her own interpretation of the current evils in the world. Those people argued further that as a freethinker, the author is entitled to her opinions, and those who disagreed with her should try to refute her in writing or speaking in the media, and not through using the law. Some said if her opponents succeed in silencing her through the court, then what will be the difference between the Toronto Secular Criminal Court and the Khartoum Islamic Sharia Court that condemned her to death for her conversion from Islam to Christianity, which is granted to her through the Article 18 of the Charter of Human Rights? Yet, others believe that if the Toronto Criminal Court ruled in the favor of the Islamic Council, then it will not be different from the Athenian court that condemned the greatest philosopher of all time, Socrates, 25 centuries ago for his new philosophical ideas and religious views which were considered contrary to the beliefs of his society. The trial proceedings were long and hotly debated between the two disputing parties. The Canadian lawyer of the author had succeeded in clearing her from all charges except one. She was able to prove to the court that the suspect was referring to the case of Afghanistan when the Taliban ruled the country. During their tyranny, Afghanistan was subjected to the Islamic draconian laws that led women to be banned from going to work and school. The Al-Qaeda terrorists found a haven in Afghanistan, and there they created a terrorist network that is responsible for most of the terrorist attacks in the world, including the bloody attacks on New York on September 11th. Therefore, the author Ibtihal believes that if the Islamic texts, the Quran, and Hadiths, have been interpreted the way the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda did, then the entire world would be turned into Afghanistan, and in that way, she has the right to dream of a better world without the terrorist religion such as Islam. The only charge that the lawyer of the genius author Dr. Ibtihal could not be able to clear her of was the allegation that in her third controversial book she called Muslims a satanic race, and the world must get rid of them as dangerous terrorists. The Canadian lawyer tried hard to show to the court in which context the book made that reference. However, the Criminal Court of Toronto has rejected all the arguments of the lawyer and condemned the controversial book as anti-Islamic, which contained hate materials against Muslims. Such a provocative book can lead some non-Muslims who hate Islam to attack Muslims verbally and physically in public places whenever they meet them. Accordingly, the criminal court ruled that the book in question must be immediately stopped from being reproduced, sold, and circulated in Canada. Furthermore, the court threatened to prosecute anyone in Canada if in the future he participates in the reproduction or circulation of such an anti-Islamic book. The Criminal Court of Toronto has also sentenced the author of the controversial book, Imagine a World Without Islam, and Imagine a World in Which All Countries Have Become Muslim to 2 years imprisonment without a chance of parole. Chapter 46. The incarceration of the Muslim apostate girl Ibtihal in Canada. After many failed lawsuits and assassination attempts in Greece, the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Iraq, Turkey, and Germany, finally, in Canada, the Muslims have been able to send their sworn enemy, the controversial author Ibtihal, behind bars for 2 years without a chance of parole. For them, her formal accusation is a great victory. Despite that, the guilty verdict of the Criminal Court of Toronto is shocking and disturbing news for many Canadians and other non-Muslim people. Everyone who read the last book of Dr. Ibtihal did not find in it that she called Muslims a satanic race. The critics and writers discussed the single reference in which the book mentioned that phrase. The person who made that phrase was a young man who did not know anything about people called Muslims. Dr. Ibtihal tried to make an African-American young man whom she met on the airplane while she was on her way from London to New York to understand that Muslim mujahideen applied military force in spreading their religion and killed those who refused to accept their religious message which was preached by Muhammad through the Quran and his hadiths. Through this assertion, the author was referring to historical facts, and no one could deny them, that Islam spread through jihad and at a point of a sword. The imaginary African-American young man in the book was thunderstruck when he heard that human beings could kill people because they refused to accept their faith if they were not of a satanic race. In other words, he wanted to tell Ibtihal that people who did such evils to others because they refused to accept their religion were human beings who are following satanic teachings, and they were controlled and directed by the devil himself. And the world should get rid of such dangerous people as getting rid of terrorists. The board of directors decided to appeal the decision of the Toronto court, but the CEO Dr. Ibtihal refused to allow the Muslims Liberation Movement to be dragged into her dispute with the Muslims of Toronto. She encouraged Dr. Kamal to fill her position and lead the movement forward in her absence. In actual fact, the condemnation of Dr. Ibtihal and her third book both contributed to furthering the cause of the Muslims Liberation Movement in Canada and all over the world. The book was sold to millions and the number of its readers and admirers reached its peak. No book ever in human history was reproduced repeatedly and rapidly and sold in millions as her masterpiece book, Imagine a World Without Islam, and Imagine a World in Which All Countries Have Become Muslim did. The book has been translated into all major European languages. Although India placed the book on a ban to avoid terrorist attacks on civilians, still the book was secretly translated into Hindi and sold on the black market. Chinese and Japanese translations of the book were produced shortly after the trial. Therefore, the members of the Islamic Council of Toronto discovered too late that the trial worked against their hidden motives. Their main motives were to condemn the provocative book and its author to put an end to the so-called anti-Islamic movement. It happened to Ibtihal's third provocative book, which had happened to the controversial book Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. The former president of Iran Ayatollah Khomeini promised to pay $2 million to anyone who killed Rushdie, but that made Satanic Verses be printed and reproduced in significant quantities and sold to millions of people all over the world. Likewise, the third book of Ibtihal, Imagine a World With or Without Islam and Muslims, was purchased and read by uncountable numbers of people around the globe. Additionally, the outcome of the trial made the book to be more reproduced and sold worldwide in a noticeably abbreviated time. Almost every educated person in non-Muslim countries had read the new controversial book. Moreover, the Muslims Liberation Movement continued to function in Toronto and all over Canada. Other books and speeches of Dr. Ibtihal were reproduced and sold in millions too. Consequently, the plot of the Islamic Council of Toronto against the Muslims Liberation Movement is a total failure, and the table has been turned against them. Even so, the Muslim world celebrated the condemnation of Dr. Ibtihal and considered her imprisonment to be a victory to Islam and Muslims that was granted by Allah. The president of Iran renewed the pledge of his country to pay a bounty of $50 million to any person or group of people who would kill the blasphemous Sudanese woman. The Iranian renewal of its promise led to a concern about the safety of the prisoner Ibtihal in the Canadian jail. There are thousands of gang members among the inmates of Toronto Women's Jail. Any gang could easily arrange the assassination of the condemned author Ibtihal and demand that huge amount of money from the government of Iran. Therefore, as soon as the Iranian president renewed his promise, the Toronto Jail Authority transferred the convict Ibtihal to a maximum security prison in Western Canada, in a small city called Prince Albert in a province known as Saskatchewan. She is kept in a solitary cell for her safety. She is not allowed to mix with any suspects and convicts in the women's prison. Therefore, the indicted controversial author of the anti-Islamic third book has not been exposed to any possible danger during her stay in prison. The jail authority allowed the Muslims' liberation movement to supply the food and drink of the condemned author Ibtihal Taha al-Amin. During those 2 years of confinement, the highly educated Sudanese man who is the apostate lover of the convict girl Ibtihal worked day and night continuing the clever work that his beloved girlfriend began, and for such a noble cause, she has gone to prison. He made several trips to Europe. He planted branches of the Muslims' liberation movement in every major city in Europe and America. Dr. Kamal managed the affairs of the movement devotedly and genuinely until his apostate girlfriend Dr. Ibtihal completed her prison term and got released. Chapter 47. The dangerous teachings which produce Muslim terrorists. As soon as the convict author Dr. Ibtihal came out of jail, she resumed her position as the chief director of the Muslims' liberation movement. The first thing she has done, she summoned the board of directors and conducted an emergency meeting. In the meeting, she proposed a brilliant idea that she believes can contribute to furthering the cause of the movement and help millions of Muslims all over the world to realize that they are victims and prisoners of dangerous teachings of the Quran and Hadiths. Her new proposal has been collectively considered to be a genius idea, and hence approved by all directors. At first, Dr. Ibtihal proposed to carry out the new project at her own risk and keep the Muslims' liberation movement out of the picture. This time, all the leaders of her liberation movement refused her idea. On the contrary, she has been blamed by all for trying to create two movements inside one single body. She has been reminded that she is the founder of the Muslims' liberation movement and therefore her ideas, writings, and speeches shouldn't be separated from the movement. Reluctantly, the CEO of the movement accepted the words of her directors. Therefore, Dr. Ibtihal has been obliged to apologize to her directors and agreed to involve the Muslims' liberation movement in everything she undertakes in the future. Dr. Ibtihal decided to turn the weapons of her opponents against them. She wants them to drink from the same bitter cup they made her drink from it. Therefore, she has determined to use the same method that had been applied to her latest book and sue the Islamic Council of Toronto for following religious texts that encourage universal anti-Semitism against the Jews and terrorist teachings that encourage and justify the killings of non-Muslims, such as Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, and atheists. Dr. Ibtihal believes that if the Canadian Criminal Court accepts her lawsuit, then the religious texts she is referring to will be placed under the ban in Canada. Accordingly, the recently released author has lodged a lawsuit against the same Toronto Criminal Court which tried, condemned, and imprisoned her 2 years ago. She supported her lawsuit with numerous verses of the Quran and the Hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. Below are selected verses of the Quran and Hadiths of Muhammad from the dangerous religious materials that encourage the terrorizing jihad teachings of Islam against the so-called infidels. According to the lawsuit, the Islamic Council is following a prophet who openly admitted that God had sent him to convert people to his religion by the sword and terrorize those who refused his message. He also claimed his Allah allows him and his mujahideen to kill the infidels who refuse to accept Islam, and then confiscate their wealth, properties, cattle, lands, women, children, and slaves. In that regard, the alleged prophet of God said, "I have been granted victory through terrorism, and the booty of my enemies is permissible to me." Again, he said, "I have been sent with the sword between my hands so that no one should be worshipped except Allah." He also said, "God made my living under the tip of my spear." He further said, "I have been made victorious through terror, and while I was sleeping, the keys of the treasures of the world were brought to me and put in my hand." Abu Huraira added, "Allah's apostle has left the world and now you, people, are getting those treasures." Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 4, Book 52, Hadith number 220. There is a well-known hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, which is found in 113 reliable Islamic books. This hadith could be found mentioned repeatedly in Sahih Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari. The Prophet of Islam said, "I have been commanded, by Allah, to fight all people until they bear witness that there is no God, but Allah and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. If they say it, they forbid me their wealth and blood. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 84, Hadith number 59. In this hadith, the Prophet said clearly that if anyone refuses to accept him as a messenger of Allah, and becomes Muslim, then he has the right to kill him, and possess his wealth and other property, women and children. The same hadith is mentioned with a slight variation in Sahih Muslim. Allah's Apostle said, I have been ordered to fight the people till they say, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. And if they say so, pray like our prayers, face our Qibla, and slaughter as we slaughter, that means they became Muslims, then their blood and other properties will be forbidden to us, and we will not interfere with them except legally. Sahih Muslim, Book 1, Hadith number 33. The Quran also supports the words of the Prophet Muhammad that God sent him to terrorize those who reject his message. The people of the book who aided them, Allah did take them down from their strongholds and cast terror into their hearts. So that, some you slew and some you made prisoners, Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verse 26. This verse speaks about the Jews of Bani Qurayza, who were 900 men who surrendered in Medina, and then were slaughtered by Muhammad, and then their women and properties were distributed among the bloodthirsty mujahideen. Soon we shall put terror into the hearts of the unbelievers, for that they worshipped others with Allah, for which he had sent no authority. Their abode will be the fire, and evil is the home of the wrongdoers. Surah Al-Imran 3, verse 151. I will instill terror into the hearts of the unbelievers, smite ye above their necks and smite all their fingertips off them. Surah Al-Anfal 8, verse 12. Against them make ready your strength to the utmost of your power, including steeds of war, to strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of Allah and your enemies, and others besides, whom ye may not know, but whom Allah doth know. Whatever ye shall spend in the cause of Allah, shall be repaid unto you, and ye shall not be treated unjustly. Surah Al-Anfal 8, verses 59 to 60. When you meet the unbelievers, smite their necks until you have crushed them. Surah Muhammad 47, verse 4. O ye who believe! Fight those of the disbelievers who are near to you, and let them find harshness in you, and know that Allah is with those who keep their duty unto Him. Surah Al-Tawbah 9, verse 123. While he was commenting on some verses of the Quran which teach violence, in Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verses 191, 193, Surah Al-Nisa 4, verses 76, 89, 91, Surah Al-Tawbah 9, verses 5, 12, 14, and 29, and Surah Al-Anfal 8, verse 39, the Egyptian scholar Khalil Abdul Karim said, these verses carry serious orders of killing the tribes that refuse to believe in the faith that is preached by Muhammad. And from the other side, there are hadiths issued by the Prophet that confirm this meaning very clearly, by which we mean killing anyone who refuses Islam. The Prophet Muhammad said, I have been commanded to fight the people until they bear witness that there is no God except Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. If they say it, they forbid from me their wealth and blood. The meaning of non-compliance is that anyone refuses to witness or utter the two shahada, I bear witness that there is no God, but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. There would be no protection for his wealth, women, children, and blood. Accordingly, killing the one who refuses to utter the two shahada is an obligation to every Muslim without exception. The message of Muhammad to all the tribes is, accept Islam, and you will be safe. Any tribe or an individual who refuses this offer would expose himself to physical annihilation, and his wealth, women, children, and slave girls would be taken by the Muslims. Abdul Karim 1999, pages 42 to 44. Anti-Semitism in the Quran and Hadiths. The Quran and Hadiths state that the Jews are cursed by God. Therefore, Allah has turned some Jews into apes, pigs, and rats. And well you knew those amongst you, children of Israel, who transgressed in the matter of the Sabbath, we said to them, be ye apes, despised and rejected by Allah. Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 65. Say, shall I inform you of what is worse than that as penalty from Allah? It is that of those Jews whom Allah has cursed and with whom he became angry and made of them apes and pigs and slaves of Tagut, the Satan worshippers. Those are worse in position and further astray from the sound way. Surah Al-Ma'idah 5, verse 60. The Prophet said, a group of Israelites was lost. Nobody knows what they did. But I do not see them except that they were cursed and changed into rats. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 4, Volume 54, Hadith number 524. Due to these anti-Semitic teachings, today, in the Middle East and North Africa, Muslims refer to the Jews as descendants of apes and pigs, the nation that Allah has cursed forever. Below is a copy of the message the Prophet Muhammad sent to the Jolanda brothers, kings of Oman, through the intermediary of his messengers, Amr ibn al-As and Abu Zaid al-Ansari. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. From Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah, to Jafar and Abdo, sons of al-Jolanda. Peace is upon him who follows the guidance. Peace be upon the one who follows the right path. I call you to Islam. Accept my message, and you shall be unharmed. I am God's messenger to mankind, and the word shall be carried out upon the miscreants. If you recognize Islam, I shall bestow power upon you. But if you refuse to accept Islam, your power shall vanish, my horses shall camp on the expanse of your territory, and my prophecy shall prevail in your kingdom. After the victory of the Battle of Badr, Muhammad turned 180 degrees, and began to dictate a new religion. The Quran forbade the freedom of faith, and Islam became the only acceptable religion to God. Anyone who refused to accept Islam would be executed and his property, cattle, women, and children would be distributed among the Muslim mujahideen. The Jews and the Christians, the people of the book, somehow were exempted from some conditions. For the Jews and Christians, the Quran states, fight those who believe neither in Allah nor the last day, nor hold the forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth from among the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel subdued and inferiors. Surah Al-Tawbah 9, verse 29. Islam requires complete submission from the Jews and the Christians. However, neither the Prophet nor his caliphs after his death followed such exemption to the people of the book. Wherever Muslims went, they invaded the Christian lands, occupied their countries, killed the men, raped their women, and sold their women and children as slaves. For the pagan Arab tribes and later the entire world, the Quran ordered they have to convert to Islam, or must be killed. But when the forbidden months have passed, then fight and slay the pagans wherever ye find them, and seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war. But if they repent, and establish regular prayers and practice regular charity, they become Muslims, then open the way for them, for Allah is often forgiving, most merciful. Surah Al-Tawbah 9, verse 5. This verse is known as the verse of the sword. This single verse abrogated the legal power of 124 verses of the Quran. Any earlier verse that speaks about peace and freedom of faith is nullified and became inapplicable by this verse. Today many Muslims claim that Islam is a religion of peace, and to prove their point, they always quote those abrogated verses such as, but there is no compulsion in religion, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 256. He who obeys the messenger obeys Allah, but if any one of them turns away and refuses Islam, we have not sent thee to watch over their evil deeds, Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 80. And dispute ye not with the people of the book, except with means better than mere disputation, unless it is with those of them who inflict wrong and injury, but say, we believe in the revelation which has come down to us and in that which came down to you. Our God and your God is one, and it is to him we bow in Islam. Surah Al-Ankabut 29, verse 46. Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you, but you do not violate limits, for Allah loveth not transgressors. Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 190. So if they dispute with thee, say, I have submitted my whole self to Allah, and so have those who follow me, and say to the people of the book and so to those who are unlearned, do ye also submit yourself? If they do, they are in right guidance, but if they turn back, thy duty is to convey the message. Surah Al-Imran 3, verse 20. Some Muslim scholars today try to show that Islam is a religion of peace, love, patience, tolerance, and grant freedom of faith. To prove their point, they quote the above verses of the Quran. However, all the above verses were written in Mecca when Islam was weak and had fewer followers, 73 followers. Those verses are known as the Meccan verses because they were revealed to the Prophet in Mecca. The verses that forbade freedom of faith and made Islam the only acceptable religion to Allah is known as the Medinan verses because Muhammad claimed to have gotten them from Allah through the angel Gabriel in Medina city. If anyone desires a religion other than Islam, submission to Allah, never will it be accepted of him, and in the hereafter he will be in the ranks of those who have lost all spiritual good. Surah Al-Imran 3, verse 85. Do they seek for other than the religion of Allah while all creatures in the heavens and on earth have, willing or unwilling, kneeled to His will, accepted Islam, and to Him shall they all be brought back. Surah Al-Imran 3, verse 83. The religion before Allah is Islam, submission to His will. Surah Al-Imran 3, verse 19. And fight them until there is no more fitna, disbelief and polytheism, worshipping others besides Allah, and the religion, worship, will all be for Allah alone in the whole of the world. Surah Al-Anfal 8, verse 39. Then when the sacred months, the 1st, 7th, 11th, and 12th months of the Islamic calendar, have passed, then kill the mushrikin. See Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 105, wherever you find them, and capture them and besiege them, and lie in wait for them in each and every ambush. But if they repent by rejecting shirk, polytheism, and accept the religion of monotheism, which is Islam, and perform al-salah, ikamat al-salah, and give zakat, then leave them free. Verily, Allah is often forgiving, most merciful. Surah At-Tawbah 9, verse 5. Ayat al-Sef, the verse of the abrogation, abrogated freedom of faith. To make her lawsuit complaint against Islam stronger and more convincing, the author Ibtihal referred to the words of a contemporary Hindu philosopher, who described the evils that Muhammad and his Mujahideen followers did in the world for 500 years. Swami Vivekananda says, every step forward was made with the sword, the Quran in the one hand and the sword in the other. Take the Quran, or you must die, there is no alternative. The Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 2, pages 369 to 370. Again, Swami Vivekananda says, think of what Muhammad did to the world, and think of the great evil that has been done through his fanaticism. Think of the millions massacred through his teachings, mothers bereft of their children, children made orphans, whole countries destroyed, millions upon millions of the so-called infidel people killed because they refused Islam. Swami Vivekananda, Volume 1, page 184. Commenting on Muslims' attitudes toward non-Muslims, Swami says, their watchword is, there is one God, and Muhammad is his prophet. Everything beyond that not only is bad but must be destroyed forthwith, at a moment's notice. Every man or woman who does not exactly believe in that must be killed. Everything that does not belong to this worship must be immediately broken. Every book that teaches anything else must be burnt. From the Pacific to the Atlantic, for 500 years, the blood of innocent people was shed all over the world. That is Mohammedanism or Islam. Swami Vivekananda, Volume 4, page 126. At first, the Toronto court refused to accept the lawsuit of the apostate Sudanese woman Dr. Ibtihal. According to the court, the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet of Islam were written 1400 years ago. Such a complaint could be accepted if the person who professed to have received those religious texts from God is still alive. Only when Dr. Ibtihal demanded that her latest banned book should be released, because it does not include terrorist teachings such as the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet of Islam, do the court accept the lawsuit. The Islamic Council of Toronto refused to present any legal representative to defend the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad on the ground that as an individual body the council would not be able to represent Muslims all over the world. The trial was conducted anyway against an absent author. After the trial, the court ruled in favor of the author Dr. Ibtihal. Regarding the verses of the Quran that the lawsuit included, they are considered by the court as anti-Semitic, teaching jihad against non-Muslim, and behind the modern Islamic terrorism. The criminal court could not issue an order to place a ban on the Quran. It encouraged Muslim leaders in Toronto and all over Canada to avoid teaching their congregations and the young generation of Muslims such anti-Semitic and terror-inspiring verses. But the court left the question of the teachings of the Prophet in his 60,000 hadiths undecided, because the hadiths are disputed between the various schools of Islamic jurisprudence. Furthermore, the court rejected the demand of Dr. Ibtihal to lift the ban order against her latest controversial book. The Islamic Council in Toronto considered the decision of the secular court as blasphemy, an unpardonable sin against Islam and Muslims. According to the Council, by condemning the sacred text of the Quran as the source of terrorism and anti-Semitism, the Toronto Criminal Court hurt the religious sentiments of 1.5 billion Muslims. Because of that, the Islamic Council requested the Canadian Secular Court to issue a public apology to Muslims all over the world. Despite that, the Toronto Court rejected the request of the Islamic Council and refused to issue an apology to any Muslim community in Canada whatsoever, and considered the case closed. A Tale of a Muslim Girl and Her Infidel Lover. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed.